story differently. A new perspective. A different look. Greater Phoenix A to Z.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when this finds you. Welcome to the Greater Phoenix A to Z podcast. I'm your host, Casey Gilchrist. Today's conversation is one I'm very excited to dive into, focused on a critical aspect of advancing equity and support for Black business owners in our community. Joining me today is Anthony Sharett, local leader and president of Pathward and Pathward Financial Services. As president, Anthony leads Pathward's banking as a service, commercial and consumer finance, tax and strategic business lines, as well as the company's marketing, communications, sustainability, and public policy teams. He has a tenured background in law and finance, is nationally recognized as a champion for diversity, inclusion, and equity, and widely recognized as a local leader and innovator. Just last year, receiving recognition from the Phoenix Business Journal as one of the most admired leaders and being named on the Arizona Capital Times 2023 Banking and Financial Services Power List. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Casey. It's great to be here. Great to finally meet you here in person. And, I'm just glad to be a part of a podcast that's sponsored by GPEC. GPEC does so much for our community and really around the state for economic empowerment, helping businesses large and small, and really sponsoring the vitalization of the Valley. So it's good to be here today.
Thank you. And I will take my check at the door. So we did not pay him to say that. Thank you so much. That it means a lot coming from you for being so recognized in the community. So we appreciate the compliments and we are very proud of the work that we do. I know I am. So to set the stage for this conversation, we spoke briefly with Teniqua Broughton, CEO of Black Arizona, and asked her to give some background on the current growth and opportunities in our community.
Almost 3 years ago, the State of Black Arizona and GPEC launched our first State of Black Business Report back in 2021. And that really was a report that we saw as a baseline that highlighted what was happening in the Black business ecosystem, from what industries we were in, what were the challenges or opportunities around access to capital, also looking at the workforce representation, and just a number of things that we found interesting that were happening in the sector and specifically to our own state. We platformed from there to our second report where we really focused in on what were those layers to access to capital and being capital ready and understanding where capital was accessible in Arizona for small business owners. And then we took our last report, which was last year, where we really honed in on recognizing what was those opportunities, even though there is undercapitalization and challenges around being bankable. We saw opportunities to think about how could we highlight more employer firms, really pushing people to do programs around supplier diversity and procurement. Also looking at opportunities of those growing industries. How can we promote partnerships and collaborations so that people can contract with other individuals or companies to truly scale their business? Something that I think is really important in the findings of our reports in the last few years, and there are many highlights and pitfalls that we've seen, but I think what's really important right now is we continue to hear advocating for access to capital. And so when we look at our work and we look at what is really driving the field, we are finding that CDFI, community development financial institutions, are critical, as well as alternative lending. We highlighted for Black Business Month in August several different alternative lending opportunities happening in Arizona. So the community CIC in Tucson has a BIPOC loan fund that is expanded to Phoenix, which is really great, an opportunity for businesses to access $10,000 and create their own kind of schedule around paying back that based off of character lending. We also highlighted Growth Partners and Hustle Phoenix, who have different models and versions of their level of lending. This is the sweet spot where our small business owners can have an opportunity, I think, to build a relationship and begin to think about how they can access capital on a different level than feeling that sometimes it's challenging to get it from a traditional bank or getting it from a payday loan, which then just increases more debt and puts them back into, I think, a pool of systemic challenges. And so what we are hoping to do in this community conversation is now hone in on all of what we've seen as insights and growth and look at what is happening on the ground with the voices of our small business owners as it relates to these current 5 issues: financial literacy, intergenerational transmission of wealth, the role of credit and lending practices, training programs for youth alongside small businesses, and the role of local government, all necessary for the Black business ecosystem. So we want to hear from the voices in the community around where they stand with some moderated questions where we have individuals who are experts in that. So we really look for this particular conversation to help us really platform and create our insights for our next State of Black Business Report in 2025.
Thank you, Teniqua, for that background. If you're interested in joining the community conversation to inform the next State of Black Business Report, that will happen on October 2nd, and we will link the RSVP while it's still live or a recap following the event in the show notes. Now, diving into the conversation. Pathward has a very simple and critical focus built on the belief that banking should be accessible to everyone. You build solutions for markets where individuals and businesses are underserved. Can you expand on Pathward's business model and what it looks like here in Greater Phoenix?
I can. We're unique. We are powered by our purpose, which is financial inclusion for all. We know that there are millions of Americans that are unbanked, underbanked, and underserved, and that creates a gap. And what we try to do by partnering with fintechs and third parties is to try to provide access to capital, to money for individuals and for small and mid-sized businesses. We're very proud of what we do. We have Midwestern roots. Our bank is headquartered in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, of all places. But we certainly have a presence here in the Valley with employees here, and proud of the fact that through our small and mid-sized business banking, we have provided loans to over 200 businesses that are here in Arizona.
Oh, wow. That's a huge feat, especially small and even just startups in general. Access to capital is crucial to the success or failure of every business, and one of the most critical factors to especially minority-owned businesses. Could you discuss the systemic challenges that these companies have historically faced and honestly continue to still face? And it can be from a Greater Phoenix, perspective or a national perspective as well.
Well, for me, Casey, powering Black and brown businesses is personal. My grandfather was a business owner. In fact, he owned a gas station and an auto repair shop in a small town called Arcadia, Louisiana in the 50s and 60s. As the gas station where only Black people could go. White people had their own gas station, and this was just for Black people that lived in that area. He was a World War II veteran, got the money that he had to start this business because he wanted to make a difference. And I saw his struggles in being an entrepreneur and a Black man in the Jim Crow South. And ever since I saw that, I knew that when I became a professional, and it was one of the reasons why I became a lawyer as well, that I wanted to help those not get a handout, but a hand up. I'm proud that, almost 70 years later, I'm working for a company that does the same thing. We do this on the consumer side by partnering with fintechs like H&R Block and Cash App and others that are trying to meet the needs, the ever-changing needs of consumers. We partner with reputable lenders that provide unsecured consumer loans to those that may need to pay a medical bill for a family member or try to make rent for the next month. And then we also directly partner with small and mid-sized businesses as well. We are making a difference as we do this. There are other banks that are smaller banks and credit unions and smaller FIs that are trying to get into this space. But we have a 20-year history of doing this, and we do it safely through our risk and compliance framework.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say, I know when I'm speaking with like my aunts and my uncles, they all own businesses and back in Virginia in various industries. How are you finding companies, especially from a smaller bank perspective? A lot of people go to their bank, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or what have you. One of the barriers that a lot of my aunts and uncles face is just not knowing where to go. So how are you going out into the community to find or at least advertise the opportunities that are available?
It's a great question, Casey, and we have to use a variety of strategies to do that. There are over 5,000 banks in the United States, and there's lots of choices, which is great, but all banks aren't created equal and all services aren't created equally. So we do a couple of things. One is we use our rebrand. We were formerly known as MetaBank, and a couple of years ago, we transitioned to our name to a company most people have probably heard of, which is formerly Facebook, which became Meta.
Okay,
and
that helps.
We used that opportunity to rebrand into Pathward, which is a combination of Path and Forward. Through that rebrand opportunity, we have been able to reach small and mid-sized businesses using a variety of techniques, whether that's online, direct, or through partners and through our excellent marketing and brand team at Pathward. Secondly is through partnerships. We are partnering with minority-owned banks and depositories and working with them to provide products and services that they simply may not have. I'm proud of a solution that we have, which is called Solutions for Financial Institutions. There are a variety of small, rural banks out there that simply do not have the ability to grow and scale and provide loans to small and mid-sized businesses the way that we do. And through a white-labeled approach, we were able to reach them through other banks. That's an innovative way that we do that. The other types of partnerships are with chambers of commerce, minority chambers of commerce. I've had lots of conversations recently with the Arizona Black Chamber. Robin Reed, who sadly passed away, was a good friend of mine, and we're with their new leadership looking at ways to partner, same with the Hispanic Chamber. And so through those partnerships, we believe that we are well positioned to find those that may not be able to find us.
That's amazing. And, partnership is the key, and it's part of what we do here at GPEC as well. So if you are a bank or a financial institution that's not already connected with Pathward and you want to, please make sure you reach out to Anthony. We'll make sure his details are included in the description of this podcast. So with Pathward's mission to drive financial inclusion for all, how do you define financial inclusion, and what specific challenges do underserved communities face in achieving financial inclusion?
Yeah, I think we've all heard that financial literacy probably should be a required course for students, and not just in high school or college, but I know with my two children, we started talking about financial literacy when they were in third and fourth grade, and would like to see others do the same because I do think it makes a difference. There are those out there that simply cannot open a checking account. And I don't think a lot of people know that, either because they don't have the credit worthiness or they might not have established credit at all, or they may have had some challenges in the past that keep them from opening a checking or a savings account. Through our payments business that we have, we provide reloadable prepaid cards that allows people, and we're probably the first or second largest issuer of those cards in the United States. And we do that to mind a gap and to meet a need. And so those that are unable to go to the grocery store, go to the gas station, pay a utility bill because they don't have a debit card, they don't have a credit card, they are not able to process ACH transactions, we meet that need through our unique and innovative card products, and we're very excited about that. We also want to help those on the path to be banked. And so through that, we provide a secured credit card. So it's a closed-loop card product that we provide through partners that really allows them to establish credit so that we can get them on the path to banking and maybe graduate from the services that we provide. On the small and mid-sized business side, the same problems actually exist. It's very difficult for small entrepreneurs and small businesses that may be starting out to get an SBA loan, to get a USDA loan, to find the working capital that they need to grow and scale their businesses. There's a secret sauce to what we do at Pathward, Casey. We work with these entrepreneurs to take a look at not only their financials, but we also evaluate them. And we believe that if we can partner with them and help them not only with getting a loan, but also with helping them and how they can grow and scale their business, we find that that's a partnership worth having, and we're very proud of that. We are a large SBA lender. We really enjoy provide working capital. And then we have other unique products and services that we can provide to small and mid-sized businesses as well. We also are doing a lot with the tribes. And in Arizona, I think, and particularly in this state, that's relevant.
Yeah.
And very proud of some of the unique challenges that they face and being able to grow and scale their businesses and meet those needs as well.
Yeah, we have had a lot of interest from tribes in Canada, actually. So I oversee our international business recruitment efforts, and one of their biggest challenges in expanding to the United States, they might have a basis in Canada, but is access to capital. So I'm going to definitely keep you in mind when we have future delegation visits, because they will often come visit Arizona to meet with the current tribes that are here and identify areas of opportunity to partner and sell their goods or their services in Arizona. So if we have somebody who's willing to work, with the tribes and be a resource, we'll definitely be plugging you in.
Well, that would be fantastic for us. As luck would have it, we actually have a Canadian office.
Oh, really?
And
Wonderful.
we've been looking at expanding our lending to tribes in Canada. So please do keep us in mind for that.
Yes. I will connect you to our Canadian friends for sure. Shifting gears a little bit, something very personal for me, the last State of Black Business report highlighted a unique aspect. The rate of business ownership by Black women is growing rapidly, though it is far from equitable. 17% of Black women in the United States are in the process of starting or running new businesses, compared to 15% of white women and 10% of white men. Yet only 3% of Black women-owned companies survive longer than 5 years. Black women-owned businesses represent 1% of all employer businesses, but bring only 0.3% of the total revenue. So how does Pathward engage in this growing subsector? Especially, how do you reach out to Black women, especially with the rates that we're seeing of ownership and wanting to run a business? How do you engage with that community?
Well, those statistics are alarming, but they're certainly not surprising.
Yeah.
One of the things that we see here in Arizona is the number of Black-owned and women-owned and Black women-owned businesses in Arizona is growing here as well. This is happening not only nationally, but locally. As a mid-size bank, our deposit assets are smaller, but we operate, and given the amount of money that we move every day with that of a mid-size bank, we recognize that there are just some folks that we cannot lend to, despite the fact that we may want to. But that doesn't mean that we don't try to solve the problem. And one of the ways that we do that is through our partnerships. And I'll give you a few examples.
Yeah, please.
One is that we support organizations like DreamSpring, which is also a lender here in Arizona, predominantly to minority and women-owned businesses. We support them through our philanthropy, through our community impact program. We've looked at other ways to partner with them as well. I happen to be the board chair of DreamSpring as well, because they provide micro entrepreneurial loans to these businesses that may not be able to get a loan from banks that are our size or larger. And so it's through these community partnerships that we're able to reach those that may need it. Likewise, we have sponsored a scholarship at the Arizona Community Foundation, where I also sit on the board of directors. With that, we have provided over $140,000 worth of scholarships to those, many of which are minority women that have the desire to be entrepreneurs, that need to go to college, but they cannot afford the dependent care to care for children. And so we, through this partnership, this collaborative partnership, providing and covering this cost so that those can go to, these women can go to college and be the entrepreneurs that they aspire to be. The other thing is, there have been some businesses that have come to us that were just simply too small or maybe posed a little too much risk for us to lend to at the outset. But we gave them some guidance on what they could do to enhance their chances of getting a loan. And minority and women-owned businesses and Black-owned women businesses have fallen into that category, where they've actually come back to us with the information that was needed through an educational approach. And we've been able to provide the loan that they needed to grow and scale their business. One of the things that I've been able to do is to go ahead and visit some of the borrowers, their businesses, either through the direct lending that we do or the indirect lending that we do. And I've seen where African-American women have been trying to start home daycares in their homes or nail salons or barbershops and things like that. And you see the difference that they're making in their communities. And you're seeing how they're keeping other folks employed in their communities. And if the only thing that they need is a little help from a lender, either ourselves or through some of these partners that I've outlined, we absolutely want to be there to help.
You're addressing so many of the barriers that exist, either through your own direct efforts or through, like you said, indirectly supporting others. And 1 to 5 organizations cannot solve all of the barriers, the challenges that exist for minority-owned businesses to get to where they want to be. I know you mentioned Dream Spring and, the foundation or the scholarship that you help support. Are there others in the community that are doing wonderful things that you admire that you would like to highlight on this podcast?
Do you mean in addition to GPEC?
You've already given that plug.
I would say certainly the Arizona Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber. They are doing some wonderful things to help Black-owned and Hispanic-owned minority and women-owned businesses. I've had an opportunity to attend some of their programming and some of the other larger scale events that they've put on. It's exciting to see that Phoenix and the Greater Valley is being such of a conduit and a hub for this type of innovation and helping, Black-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses to be able to grow and scale. Both of these organizations are taking what I'd call as a holistic approach to this. It's more than just networking. It is more than just providing access to capital. There's an educational component to the programs that they have, and I think that's really what we need. The thing that I've enjoyed the most about what we are doing here in the Valley, and it really goes back to what you said, we are not trying to do this in isolation, but we recognize that we are better together. And I think these collaborative approaches that we're taking, where each of us has an area where we are at our best, I think that it's through that approach, that collaborative approach, is how we really get to address some of the systemic barriers and some of those horrible statistics that you outlined earlier in our discussion.
Yeah. And oftentimes, especially in my role, people will come to me and say, I want to get involved. Where are the gaps that still exist? Like, where can companies or business leaders that maybe have an expertise that they want to showcase or collaborate with you on, what areas need the most support from the business community right now in Greater Phoenix?
That's a great question, really, about where are we with the market?
Yeah.
Where is the market heading? And I think a corollary to that is, what do people need? And I'd say a few things. The service industry, irrespective of what the macroeconomic environment is, and I think one exception to this would certainly be the COVID-19 pandemic, the service industry, there is always going to be a need for businesses within that space, whether it is, in the restaurant business, whether it's a specific trade, whether it is personal service that people need. I think that's a real opportunity. Secondarily, there's a real gap around employment. While I know that our unemployment numbers have leveled both nationally and locally, I know from walking around town and talking to people that I know, there are thousands of people out here in the Valley that are still looking for employment. So I think any company or any agency that can help folks find employment, meaningful employment, help their families, I think there's certainly a need for that. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention technology. We know that my daughter is a freshman in college at Spelman in Atlanta, and there's a recognition even by her at 18 years old that having a proficiency around technology, computing, AI, that is a real opportunity. We could do a whole podcast on where AI is going, and frankly, how AI could help, not hinder, some of the gaps that we find in our Black and brown communities. But I think anything that is touching technology and tying technology with meeting a customer or a business need, these are all areas of opportunity as well.
Yeah, and if I would challenge the business community that's listening to this that wants to get involved, if you do have an expertise in any of the topics that Anthony outlined, Reach out to me. I know I can connect you to the right folks within our community who could help collaborate with you on programming. And that way you can share your expertise to the people that need it the most, and they can apply that to their business. So,
But Casey, one of the things that I tell people is we certainly want people to follow their passion, because I do believe if you're passionate about something, that more likely than not you will be proficient at it. I think the yes and to that is also follow what you're good at. When we provide working capital or other loans to small and mid-sized businesses that need it, those that are successful have leaders and entrepreneurs that are really proficient at whatever it is that they're trying to do. And I think when you marry that passion with a proficiency, that's where I think you find business success.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to open like a bakery, but I'm not a baker. You know what I mean? So it's probably not the right business move for me. So follow your passion and follow your proficiency. That's huge.
But you could buy a bakery.
I could and manage it from afar and just be the taste tester of everything.
And that's actually something that, I definitely want to talk about a bit today, which is there are lots of ways to own a small or mid-sized business. And I think this is particularly true for those that may not have the startup capital or may not be able to raise the dollars that they could raise at the outset from a startup perspective. What we are finding is, and I think some studies would bear this out, that there is great success when people actually buy an existing business that has cash flow, that has existing customers, that has an existing real estate footprint. That is another way to go about this, as opposed to starting a business from the ground up. Both, you can be successful at both, but what we've seen is we're seeing a lot of people recognize that buying and purchasing an existing business at times could be easier to grow and scale than starting a business from the ground up. So I just want to make sure people understand there are lots of different models to make this successful.
And what is that? I'm genuinely curious now because I'm trying to diversify, my income streams and what I dabble in. What is that process? Like, what if you've never owned a business before? Would I go to a bank to open up a line, just to acquire the company? What is that process like?
Well, I think the first thing is understanding sort of the market. And we're fortunate now that there are actually a handful of very reputable websites out there that actually will showcase small businesses that may be up for sale in your community. Biz by Sell comes to mind as an example. So I encourage people to go out and take a look at some of these websites that actually show small businesses that may be up for sale. I mean, I'm actually combed that website regularly, and I'm surprised at how many small businesses, even here in Phoenix, can be purchased for less than $50,000.
Really?
And so, sometimes people just want to get out from underneath a bad situation. They may be trying to retire or move or maybe pay it forward. So I would encourage people to take a look at those resources and see what's available. Secondarily, there's no more better research than just being boots on the ground, just walking around your community, driving around communities, seeing what may be up for sale, seeing what may be a good location, seeing where there may be some foot traffic and things like that. So that's another great resource. I would say the other thing is many of our state, local, and federal government agencies have great websites when it comes to how to both start and or purchase a small business and the things you would need to do, such as establishing a tax ID and establishing an LLC or some other corporate entity that would be necessary to do this. Maybe talking to an attorney there are attorneys that specialize in this and do not charge an exorbitant fee to help those that may want to acquire another business. Certainly talking to a bank about this and understanding what the requirements would be to acquire or purchase a small business as opposed to starting one from the ground up. How much money, could you borrow to do something like this? So there are a variety and a host of resources that could be helpful. But again, I think so many times entrepreneurs think, and rightfully so, I understand, that I want to start my own business or start my own nonprofit. And I'm so glad that there are people out there that are passionate about this, particularly people of color, particularly African Americans, because we need this. However, There are a variety of ways to attack this, and sometimes acquiring an existing business that has cash flow, that may be the way to go.
Yeah, it's like a jump start to your dreams, essentially, especially if it's a business that you frequent and admire. You're already proficient in that company, especially if you spend your money there already. All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit back to your entrepreneurial mind, if you will. So as a business owner and founder, what has been the toughest lesson that you have learned?
For me, my small business venture was back in college and in law school. A good friend of mine, whose name also happens to be Anthony, one of my best friends. We met running track at Ball State University, and we wanted to start a business at the time. This is pre-cell phone. This was pre a lot of things, internet. We developed a business where we worked with those in the art and design community to put their portfolios at the time, and this is really dating myself, on a CD-ROM. And so as opposed to having your portfolio today, it would be in the cloud, or certainly would be saved on your laptop or your iPad or on your phone. None of those things existed. And as opposed to bringing in a paper portfolio or a portfolio that was a big binder, we helped folks that were in the design, photography, and artistic space put their work on a CD-ROM, and then they could send that in to a future employer. What did I learn from that experience? What I learned is this is tough. It's hard. We went to trade shows. I remember we went to the Black Expo in the state of Indiana, which is hosted in the city of Indianapolis. We would travel around the country and try to market this because at the time it was very unique. We did make money. We did make some traction, but I really learned 3 lessons from that. One is, while we were good at this, we weren't great at it. Neither of us had a technology background, but we did educate ourselves and figure out how to do this and partnered with those that did. So that was really lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is it's very difficult to grow and scale things, right? We thought we had a captive audience who we could sell and market this to. What we found is it was very difficult for us to grow and scale this more broadly without a great strategy to do that. But what I learned, and maybe most importantly, number 3, was it really taught us how to pivot. Ultimately, what we did is we learned that while there was some market for this, there wasn't a great market for this, but there might have been a market for us to help some of these artistic and design professionals grow and create their own business, because we were going to law school and we were going to be lawyers by trade. And so as opposed to providing them with a way for them to market their portfolios, we actually helped them establish their own businesses. And that's what we were able to grow and scale. So it was through one idea came a better idea, which really allowed us to grow and scale things in a way that we still didn't make a lot of money, but we were making more money and doing better than what the original product had been brought to bear initially.
Yeah, and you're gaining experience for your professional career as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of young people face challenges for that and getting quality experience to put on their resume. And what about your most valuable lesson? I know it might be included in those 3 that you outlined there, but what is perhaps your most valuable lesson that you've learned?
I think the most valuable lesson is, irrespective of what business you're in, what market, large or small, urban, rural, tech, non-tech, service, non-service, it always comes back to people. One of the things that we say at Pathward is we don't pick winners or losers. We will lend to anybody. We will provide a service to anyone, because that's what financial inclusion is really all about. And for us, it always comes back to people. When we evaluate the partners that we want to partner with, it's how much money we could make off of a partnership is kind of down the list. Number 1 is, does this meet our purpose? Does this enable our purpose of financial inclusion for all? Number 2, are the fintechs or the technology companies that we're working with, do they have people that have the same values that we do? That's really important for us. Number 3, are we meeting a consumer need and doing so in a way that's non-predatory in a safe and sound manner? These are the things that are really important for us, and ultimately it comes back to the people. We want to work with people that want to work with us and that want to do good. That's really important to us at Pathward. And I think, through some of these entrepreneurial experiences that I had, it always comes back to people.
What a great topic or just sentiment to end on. So I could honestly chat here. I say this every podcast. I could continue this, but my team is like, no, Casey, we have to limit you or else it'll be an hour and a half long. But I want to thank you, Anthony, for dedicating your time and all of your advice and insights to this podcast today. To wrap this up, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you if they're interested in becoming a partner with Pathward? How can they best reach you?
Well, I'm not a huge social media guy, but I am on LinkedIn, so folks can reach out. They can go to pathward.com as well. There's quite a bit of contact information there if anyone wants to reach out. Okay,
perfect. Thank you for listening today, everyone. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast listening app and rate us 5 stars, or you can leave a review of the show. That would help us tremendously. To keep up with what's happening in Greater Phoenix, follow us at Greater PHX on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or at GPEC on X. Until next time, be safe and well. Cheers.